Join acclaimed artist Prune Nourry on a captivating exploration of art and inspiration. Discover the concept of artists as vessels, channeling creativity from a higher source. Dive into the delicate balance between feedback and self-critique. Explore Prune's formative years, passion for craftsmanship, and groundbreaking projects. Prepare for a fascinating conversation with a visionary artist.
Hello, hello.
Hello, Yuri.
How are you?
Great.
Look like you're in a beautiful place right now.
I'm in the south of France. I'm sculpting, so I'm in my happy place.
Yeah, it looks nice. It looks sunny, bright weather. It's great. How is summer so far?
So I'm working near Château Lacoste, which is a place where I've been opening a few weeks ago a sculpture, a monumental sculpture, which is a giant woman where you can go inside the belly. So, this is an area that I really cherish. And I came back here to work on the maquettes of a future project that will be ready in a year. So it's finding the time to sculpt and focus just on clay is really what I love to do. So you cannot find me more happy than right now.
I was doing some research. So I went through all your work, your exhibitions, articles about you. And the more I was reading about you, the more immersive I was becoming. I was like, oh my God, there's so much depth, so much more interesting things here. I wanted to pick a few things to talk about, but I can't. I got so overwhelmed. Everything feels so fascinating. The topics, the theme that you choose to tackle are all so important. So I was like, you know what, let's just start for what's going on right now. And I think what's going on right now is the Meta Earth. So maybe you can tell us a little bit about that, what it came about, and the story behind it, and that sort of thing.
Yeah, with pleasure. I'm happy you don't ask me to choose because I'm like a mom. It's all my kids, so I cannot pick one. But so Mother Earth, let's start by her. So that place, which is in the south of France, called Château Lacoste, is like a sculpture park, and I met with them a few years ago, and it's like a family behind it, really special people. And when they proposed me, I couldn't believe, because it's a place where you have Louise Bourgeois, Richard Serra, Calder, Tadao Ando, like people that I really admire. So it took me a while to propose them ideas and believe in it. And at some point, I came with two projects. And when they saw the project of Matter, they say, "Wow, this is so Château Lacoste." So the deal was done. We were about to start, but COVID hit. So we were asking for the permits, and because it was a monumental sculpture that where you have public going inside, so you need architectural permits. So 3 years later, we were about to start. It was like a year ago. And it took us, let's say, 9 months, like procreation time, to make it happen. We started by the foundations, which to me are the masterpiece, but you cannot see them because they are under earth. It's made of stone, really like, in the ancient times. In Château Lacoste, you can find some Roman archaeological path. And so I was inspired by that, and we worked with craftsmen specialized with stone from that local area to make the foundation. So even if the sculpture disappear in a few hundred years, the foundation will still be there in millenaries, that I can assure you. So the foundations are in stone, and then we built in bricks, fired bricks, and we decided to do our own brick with raw clay, local clay, using the help of a horse who would really like traditionally turn around a pole that was mixing the earth and the water to create bricks that we would let the sun cook. So little by little we got 10,000 bricks, and we were able to build the inside of the belly only with raw bricks, and the outside was those fired bricks covered with a mix of material, which was lime, but also potassium silicate, which is a mineral. And what was very important for me symbolically is while we were building, there were all these crazy fires, forest fires going around. So destruction, like it happened often in places so hot like the south of France. But unfortunately, that pasture was terrible. So going into a sculpture that was about procreation and creation and seeing all that destruction around, we got the idea to, call the fireman and go with our shovels and just, take as many ashes as we could, hundreds of kilos and hundreds of kilos. And from that, we mixed it with the final part of the sculpture. And in fact, it was not only symbolically the fact of ashes are like the idea of rebirth, like you would have with the phoenix, but also it's a technique that was used by the Romans in their concrete to protect from the rain. So it was symbolically and technically making sense to us. So that's how Matter Earth was born.
When you started talking about the project, you mentioned two things that I was interested in. You said, it took me some time to figure out what I wanted to present and to believe in it. And I think that's an interesting thing. Tell me more about the process. How do you get to believe in your idea, to be able to execute it in the way that you want to?
So the thing is, it was more hard for me to believe that they were really proposing me to do something there, because it was such incredible artists. Some were dead already, and it was like being in a myth. So, but then to that idea that I proposed, I was already believing in it, but obviously it's something that I had never done. So like every project that I do, I like to put myself in danger all the time, which I think is also the definition of an artist. Always challenge yourself and find new techniques and take risks, while of course collaborating with the best. So for me, it's always the key is always when I start a project, I want to have good foundations, meaning good research. So I always start by either speaking to specialists like scientists, if it's a project related to sociology, anthropology, for example, or craftsmen, if it's a very technical project, or both, obviously. And so for this one, it was understanding the geography of which craftsmen in the area were doing what, which material we could use, what was the way of working at Château Lacoste locally with the team there. So all of that, were my base, my foundation to help me believe in the project.
So how do you adapt your lifestyle? Because you have a life, you have a family, and then suddenly have those large projects that really require you to commit to 100% of your time, but also relocate, be in this place for a long period of time. How do you first decide what's worthwhile? Of course, this one was an incredible opportunity, but what's the process for you there? What's the what are you thinking about it? What are the things that you're worried about it then?
I like to have a nomadic studio, meaning that I have a strong trunk. I have one studio in Paris and one studio in New York with a team, with people I trust and that are doing very complementary things. But then for each project, I like to sculpt wherever the project is and wherever it makes sense. So for example, that past year, at the same time I was doing Matter Earth in Château Lacoste in the south of France, by the way, where my grandmother and all a part of my family are, because my mother come from that area, so it wasn't that exotic to me. At the same time, I was doing a project in Nigeria, in Ife, which is an imperial city very well known at the 15th century, where the Ife heads in terracotta and bronze are coming from, and they are well known with scarifications like lines on them. And me as a sculptor, when I discovered them a few years ago, to me, I considered them like the most beautiful pieces of art ever. And I was like, no one can do more beautiful than this. And also they were done from the clay of Ile-Ife, which is that very mythical place in the world where it's said that all humanity comes from there. And the myth, the Yoruba myth, says that human was made out of clay, so from that clay. So it was a dream for me since many years to go there. And again, COVID hit and I couldn't, and I had to postpone that project. So as soon as the frontier reopened, took a ticket to there, and my family were, where are you going? Why are you going suddenly to Nigeria? I was so quick. I was like, it's not quick because it's been in my guts since months and years. So, suddenly my studio became Ile-Ife because it made sense to do the sculptures with the clay from there. So depending on the project, like Terracotta Daughters, which is a project I did in China a few years ago, same thing. I had just moved to New York, maybe 2 or 3 years before. And I decided to do that project in China, which is like 12 hours time difference, a lot of flights. And so very bad idea. But when you have an idea that cannot get out of your mind, that's when you know that you have to do it. And it became my spine project in a way, because I started it in 2012 and it will finish in 2030. It's buried underground until then. And same, like I moved my studio there in Xi'an, which is the city from where the well-known terracotta soldiers were made and were found in the 70s. So obviously I had to work there from the same clay than the Xi'an soldier, and so the location and especially the material and the symbol around it is very important for me to choose where I'm gonna work next.
Is that something that you always had? This energy, this commitment, like you said, once I have this in my mind, I just have to get it out. Is that something that you always had as a kid, or maybe as you started involved as an artist, that fire kind of started burning a little bit, stronger?
That's a good question. I think I always had it in me, but it was a little flame, and the more you feed it, the more it grows. So the flame kept growing.
So how do you feed that flame?
By being proactive, meaning when I have an idea, it's great to have ideas. We all have a lot of ideas all the time, but the complexity is how to do them, and how to do them respecting the process, meaning the people that you're gonna work with, and also the ethics of your idea at the beginning, and how you accept also that it's gonna evolve, because you need to respect the people that are gonna be part of it. So for me, that's I would say that's the way to have that flame growing, by doing the things I have in mind and always be proactive. I give you an example. If you don't take that first ticket to go to Nigeria, you would never do it. If you don't, maybe sometimes it's serendipity. You're going to meet on your way someone who's going to tell you, I went to play a gig in Lagos. I'm like, wow, I'm dreaming to go to Nigeria. That was like 6 years ago, a friend of mine telling me that. And I'm like, incredible. Please, if you can meet someone who can tell you if there are still some craftsmen working in Ife, which is a city not that far from Lagos. And my friend asked around him, and he asked to a musician who is also a producer. And 5 years later, I'm calling that guy, and I'm like, my friend at the time told me about. And he was like, I remember you, the crazy girl who wanted to go to Lagos. And of course, come. And so that's how, and he became the producer of the project, and it really turned into a collaboration, because him, as an artist, musician, was dreaming to work on that subject, which is the Chibok girls. We haven't talked about it yet. And felt, as a Nigerian, felt a need, a mission to help the families and work on it, because he felt that since 8 years, no one anymore was talking about that subject. And as a Nigerian, he felt that it was really important for him to do something. So it really became, that was the start of the collaboration there.
How often the project change as it goes? Originally when you start a project, you have an idea, but as you mentioned, you have to be flexible, things change, there's collaborators. How often do you see that happening within your exhibitions? And is that something that you welcome? That transition, the feedback back and forth within the environment, with what's going on at the same time?
Yeah, absolutely. Generally, you have a line, so you have a spine, a main idea, but the body goes on and according to the collaboration and the brainstorming. But if the foundations are good, then if the feet are good, then the project won't move that much from its origin, but it will just keep nourishing itself. So it's just growing in a way.
All your projects so far has a very specific undertone in terms of themes that you want to tackle, you want to have conversations, and they're very important. Is that something that's going on with you internally, and then you decide to express that through your art when you start engaging with the ladies in Lagos, but as well Mother Earth and all? I mean, sorry, Mother Earth and all of those other projects too.
That's a good question. That's a good concept. Yeah. In fact, I thought at first when I started to work on my projects, I thought that I was like a sociologist or an anthropologist, working very objectively on some subject and I would go to anthropologists and sociologists and ask them questions and try to create those foundations for my projects, but thinking I was objectively working on them. Where a few years ago in 2016, I learned that I had a cancer and I was 31. And that was a hit, like a trauma, like a kick. And in fact, my reaction to that was to take that sickness like a project, like a production, and to be proactive about it. And through that, little by little, for the first time, I started not to have the camera in front of me, but to turn the camera towards me and to go inside me, thinking that tumor in a way was like clay that I needed to sculpt and that I needed to transform for something better. And so for the first time, I realized that it's impossible to be an artist and to be objective. As an artist, you are for sure subjective. And for sure, whatever you're talking about touch you in a way that you cannot sometimes consciously imagine. So I accepted more the let go, the intuition, also the collective unconsciousness that is part of me, part of my DNA, but part of all our DNA that connects all of us. And finally, that's what I'm the most interested in. I realized it's the myth that links all of us, that's how you say a collective unconsciousness is.
Collective consciousness. Yes.
So this is really for me the base of all the subjects I love to work on. So they all have always a link, of course, to my guts.
Now, you touch a subject that I'm interested in. I want to see if maybe we can explore this together, the collective consciousness thing. So the idea, if I understand correct, the idea is that we don't have ideas. We are just a vessel through ideas. The ideas exist, and whoever's tuning with the universe at the right time, the right moment, you can express there as a vessel. Is that something how you see creativity? Is that how you see inspiration? Your ideas doesn't really quite belong to you. It was almost given to you and it's just your job to project it?
So it's something that you find in many religions. It's really, for example, in the pre-Hispanic myth, it was the idea that there were no artists. It was more the material. It was a kind of spirit, like an animist idea of the spirit inside the material, like a rock or clay. The idea would already be inside, and the artist, as you say, was just either the vessel, either the tool to bring it out. Then you have also an idea that you find in many same religions, like for example, Ashe for the Yoruba, or the Chi in China, or the Prana in India. It's like it's that kind of flame, in fact, that you have within you, and that makes you breathe, but breathe creativity, and that I'm very interested in. And also You find it in the Buddhist religion, for example, the idea of there is either the rebirth, either the reincarnation, and the reincarnation would be with a mission. So you know you have a mission and you're going to achieve it through your life. Your life is there for a mission. And it's true that, for example, within my art, if I don't feel useful, then I lose interest. So for me, the art I'm doing needs to be useful in a way to the others, to the energy of the world, or I lose interest.
Do you believe you were born with a mission?
I don't know if it's a mission, but at least there's one thing I know to do and I want to do, and I would be very bad at anything else. So sometimes you're like, okay, I would be useless. So this is where I can feel useful and also blossom, because when you feel useful, you blossom. So I think it's selfish to be generous, or it's in a way you do
it for yourself, yeah.
Yeah, it's what's strange with art in a way. It's you have to do it in your own way, but in the end it's not yours anymore, because it wouldn't be interesting to me if I was keeping my art for me, or if I was doing it and I want people to hate it or to love it, but if they feel nothing, then that means, it's what's the point? So yeah, I would say that's the most important to me.
How do you deal with, you mentioned you wanted people to have a reaction, right? Either hate it or love it. How do you deal with feedbacks, maybe criticisms, things like that? As an artist, you pour in your soul in your project, and yet people perhaps don't see the whole picture, doesn't understand what it takes to do what you're doing, have an opinion.
Yeah.
How do you feel about that?
I think it makes you grow. It's always important to question yourself, and generally I'm the biggest critics of my work or projects. Mm-hmm. I try to always also see it through the eyes of one another. I even did a project which was called Anima, which was about that, looking through the eyes of one another. But obviously, as you said, you give your soul, you give your time. So I think the most hard critics would be if someone was saying that you didn't do it for the good reasons, and where in fact you thought you did it for the good reasons. So, but people wouldn't see it that way. So that would be hard, because that would mean that you didn't manage to follow the ethics that you wanted, the line you wanted for your project from the beginning.
You were mentioning about being in touch, with the flame, with the creativity, with the source. But we live in a world with so much going on all the time, news, social media. Now there's so much distractions. For an artist or someone who wants to exercise their creativity, how do you manage to stay away from that, or at least stay in touch with the true self, or at least being able to explore those things and have, mind space in your head to ask different questions, to talk about it, and to even explore those things?
True. For an artist, I think the residency, the concept of residency is a good way to protect yourself. For example, when I go to Ile-Ife to work, I'm full into sculpting. When I go to Chateau Lacoste and I know I have 8 days in front of me to sculpt a giant face, and so to put myself deadline, which are kind of residency, or where I am right now, I know that for 3 weeks I'm all about sculpting, and I'm away from Paris and away from New York, which are very inspiring cities, but where you would get stimulation all the time. So the stimulation is good, but the retreat is good. So it's just a balance. I think everything is about balance. It's a bit simple to say it that way, but so it's about finding that stimulation, but at the same time always protecting some time, some quality time, to be able to focus, because if not, we forget to focus. We all have ADHD in a way. But so reading is a good training for the focus. and just to extract yourself from the stimulation sometimes is good too. And I would say the brainstorming also is great, because when you put many people together, something crazy that you wouldn't have predicted is always coming out.
Tell me a little bit about your upbringing. You mentioned that your family was more or less in the same area that you were in. What was like growing up for you in the environment with your family, your parents? What was like it in Paris in the mid '80s and early '90s?
So I was lucky to come from a family they weren't artists, but they were open to art. And I was number two. So, I was, let's say, I had more freedom to fail or to be,
I'm number two too. That they don't care about us as much. We can do whatever we want.
I mean, it's even better when you're number five, but unfortunately we were only two. And so they weren't artists, but they were, in a way open and to push me towards that, not push me, but help me fit it. So to give you an example, when I was 10, we were during the week in Paris, but during the weekends we were going to Normandy, which is near the sea side. And so I knew the names of the trees, the name of the birds, and also we were walking on the beach, and every week going to the same point at the final pass, which was a shipwreck. And that shipwreck was beautiful. I knew it was like this, but little by little along the time, it started to fall and became a kind of slide for us kids, and we were, going on it, climbing on it, and really playing on it. But also, time after time, it started to go into pieces, into different pieces, and crumble and be destroyed by just the waves going on it years by years. And at some point, it was totally destroyed. And it was everywhere on the beach, but it was looking like artworks, in fact. And so I decided, with the help of my parents, we said, okay, we're going to do an opening for friends. And we created an invite that I drew, and I was maybe 10 or 11. And we sent it to, all the friends that were in the neighborhood and the people around us. And everyone joined and gathered, and they were like, oh, who is the artist? Who is the artist? And in fact, the artist was the sea. And the project was called Éphémère, which means ephemeral. It's a game on words, which means ephemeral and the sea. So that's the kind of thing that my parents would help me doing, which is crazy. So I was really helped on that. But obviously, when I said that I wanted to do it like a career, which was not even really an idea, but when I said I want to do an art school, and I said I wanted to be a public school, I wanted to be a craftsman school because I want to learn the techniques, I wanted to be short. I was very precise with what I wanted. And it's a renowned school in Paris, but only in France, a renowned school in France made for artisans. Where we were only 6 to be accepted, we were only 4 to have our degree, so it's a very small school. But I wanted to be an artist, and it was a craftsman school, so what was the logic? But for me, the logic was that it was short, only 3 years, and I wanted to learn by myself, not at school, but I wanted to learn the techniques at school, and then the concept would come after. And also it was less pressure to come out as young as possible, because I would have time to try, and then if I was failing, I would have time to learn something else. So it was kind of very clear idea, and at the same time not being sure of myself, so trying to do it as early as possible in case it would be a failure.
What was like those 3 years in school? Was exactly what you wanted to be?
Yeah, exactly what I wanted to be, because it was very technical, very hard, not they weren't teaching me how to be an artist because they were raising craftsmen, and there I learned the passion of craftsmanship, which became a key collaboration for me when I got out of school. Because when you're a sculptor and when you want to do pieces, for example, in glass, or in porcelain, and you have never tried either of them, you go to the best craftsmen and you brainstorm with them, and what would take you 10 years to learn, and you would still be a junior, they have 40 years of knowledge, and they're always doing the same material, where as an artist you go and you try different things. So I really learned the respect of craftsmanship, and how the collaboration was meaningful to me.
Is it fair to say that every craftsman is an artist, but not every artist is a craftsman?
So that's a good question. No, I think for both it's not the case. So for me, a craftsman would master a material, all his life would work on it, and sometimes that craftsman will want to create out of it, or he wouldn't want. Some doesn't want to be creative on that side. They want to reproduce or do restoration of very old pieces, for example. And for the artists, it's the same. Not all of them are craftsmen. Some are doing little sketches, and then they ask someone else to do the clay part, and then they're going to do a 3D printer and then a 3D scanner, which I use sometimes for some maquettes, or for some projects where you need something super light, so you couldn't use any material, traditional material. But mainly I like to have my hands in clay, which doesn't make me a good craftsman neither, because I still need to work with craftsmen to work on some material that I don't know how to do. Like, for example, lab glass, Pyrex, which is super complicated material. So I had an idea and everyone was telling me it's impossible. And then I went to that guy specialized in lab glass, who started working when he was 14, and he was now 55, and he said, okay, let's try it. And in fact, we managed to do it together.
How old were you when you figured out, like, you know what? I got this. I can make a living out of this. I'm a good artist. I understand what I want to accomplish, and this is how I'm going to live my life. Do you feel like do you see yourself as an accomplishing artist? Is that another question too?
Accomplished, I hope I will feel like that when I will be 98, and I hope to live that long. There is no retirement for an artist, and that's good. I'm happy with that. I'm just begging, my right arm with a master craftsman specialized with mold, and we are like soulmates of work. So I'm telling him, you're supposed to retire in your 60s, and I'm going to stay alone for so many years. So but yeah, no, it's a work in progress. All my life will be a work in progress.
What are you planning right now? I mean, you mentioned you were doing your art. You're doing a lot of clay sculpture and everything else. You just finished an incredibly large exhibition that's been very successful. What is next for you?
So this piece that we finished in Château Lacoste is permanent, so that's cool. But the one that I just done in Nigeria, which is an army of sculptures based on the Chibok girls kidnapped by Boko Haram 9 years ago now. It's a collaboration with a university in Ile-Ife, the teachers, but also the students, 108 students. So I sculpted the 8 heads based on photographs that the families entrusted us with. So it's like portraits of them, mixed with the Ife heads style from the 15th century. And from the molds, we did 108 that all students retouched during a giant workshop and transformed according each of them to a different pictures that the family had given us. So we had an army of all the Chibok girls still kidnapped, and we exhibited all that army in Lagos for 3 months, and it finished. The closing reception was last February, and now we are hoping to travel it to different countries on the continent. I can't tell you because nothing is sure yet. I
Yes.
prefer not to give destinations yet, but we have very precise ideas, and then to Brazil and then to US. So it's like a 4 years travel, like I did at the time with the army that I made in China with craftsmen from Xi'an. And we traveled it to Shanghai, then to Paris, Zurich, New York, Mexico City, and then we brought it back to China, where we buried it in a secret place until 2030. So this is a life-size terracotta army of girls mixed with the soldiers from the style of the soldiers from Xi'an, the terracotta soldiers, and it's called the Terracotta Daughters. So the project in Nigeria, which is called Statues Also Breathe, this one is about to do the same kind of a world tour. So that's taking us as a team a long time. But I'm also working right now on a project of a train station in Paris with an architect, a Japanese architect, and it's again an army of women. So that would be for next year. Also a project in Miami, a public art project, and another sculpture of 4 meters that we are finishing for September, and many other projects. So it's nonstop, but I want to do more and more projects in the US because I love being there.
Now, if you are to travel in time and go meet that little 10-year-old on the beach with her exhibition right now, what would you think that 10-year-old would be proud of the life that you're living in?
Yeah, I think she would like the fun for sure. And yeah, she would feel that little flame, that keeps growing along the projects. The more you do projects, the more you feed the flames, the more you learn. And I think that curiosity is what keeps us young. So I hope to be curious and to learn constantly until this 98 that I'm aiming to.
You have a specific number, 98. That's the number.
Because 8 is my lucky number, but I feel that 88 is too young.
Yeah, well, hopefully we can pass the technology improving. We can live a little bit longer. So maybe a 108,
Yeah,
108. Who
no
knows,
problem.
right?
I
Why
love
not?
108. All my armies are 108. You're right. I don't have a big enough vision like you do. So thank you for opening my mind.
I tell my kids I'm going to live to 126. Six is my lucky number. And I'm like, no. And she's like, nobody lives to 126. I'm like, no, technology is improving. Ooh, by then, hopefully, we have something that can make us, knock on wood if we don't destroy ourselves first.
I have some.
But, bro, I want to ask you 3 things before I let you go. I always ask every guest to recommend us a book to read, a movie or TV show to watch or a documentary, and who should we invite to be our next guest here on Minded?
Okay. So there is a book that I love by Suleika Jawad. She's a writer based in New York. Her book is called Between Two Kingdoms. She's a survivor twice. She's younger than me, and she went through it twice. She's one of the most interesting women I know. I think you should invite her. So that will answer 2 questions. And the other one was?
Oh, the other one. Sorry, you said about should invite her. I'm like, oh, that's a great idea. A movie or a TV show or a documentary, something to watch.
Okay.
You can recommend like your favorite movie, for example. Can be on a classic movie or
Oh, it can be a classic movie. Oh,
yeah,
okay.
yeah, 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 yeah.
Okay, okay. I have so many also. So I'm a big fan of Soy Cuba, the black and white movie that
Hmm.
was forbidden for so many years and refound by incredible directors, including Francis Ford Coppola, and it's a little gold nugget because it's 4 stories into one. The techniques of shooting it is still incredible from a today's perspective. It was like so far ahead at the time, and there is a dance scene that is incredibly sensual and rhythmic in a way that you want to dance yourself. So, inspiring movie.
Prune, I have said it before here in the podcast, and I'll say it again. I'm a father of two young girls, and for me to be able to talk to another woman like yourself, who are not only a talent and really, on the top of the line when it comes to their field, but also creating opportunities and in voices to other women issues and highlighting all the strong women all over the world, and really creating opportunities to showcase their stories through art is a tremendous joy. And I'm thrilled to have the chance to talk to you for a little bit, get you to know a little bit more. And I want to thank you so much for the time and joining us today.
Thank you, Yuri. And you can tell your girl that I will need a lot of hands to shovel out my army in 2030. So I'm happy to have them with me.
Well, we'll make a trip. Yes, absolutely. And again, I'll be in Paris soon. Look forward to get you know, in person. Come visit the studio, and we can continue this conversation furthermore.
Amazing. Thank you so much. See
Thank
you
you. Have a
soon.
great day.